Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2019 horror film Wake Up, a film that is co-written and directed by Joe W. Noland, and it stars Scott Broughton, Tracy L. Newman and Kelly Francis Fisher. And this focuses initially on a teenage girl who seemingly is living a very normal life with her family and her brother who comes home to visit. And then a horrific act takes place and she seemingly kills her family in some kind of trance state while she's asleep. The film then jumps forward a little bit and there is a psychiatrist called Dr. Tanner, played by Scott Broughton, who is essentially given the task by his superior of investigating this case and finding out what happened and what went wrong. Now, he can't interview the teenage girl because she committed suicide, so he has to investigate by visiting the sites and reading her, especially her diary that she wrote at the time. And however, there's a stark warning at the beginning of this diary that if you read it, you're going to be cursed forever. Obviously, he doesn't take that seriously, reads the diary, and then from that moment on, as the further he gets into his investigation, the more he starts seemingly losing his mind and then starts directly putting his family at risk. Right, so that's essentially the main thrust of this story. Now, this is a low-budget horror film, and the low-budget side of this film is hard to avoid when you watch this film. Some of the sound design's a bit on the poor side. Some of the acting's questionable at best from some of the smaller character roles, if you like. The main leads do a decent enough job. The husband and wife, Scott Broughton and Tracy L. Newman, actually had pretty decent chemistry, and you felt like they were could have been married. Kept firing like jokes back at each other and all this kind of stuff, and it seemed like a fairly believable relationship. The problem with this film is, and there's a few, is it just does a terrible job of explaining itself. Okay, so there's this teenage girl that loses her mind and kills her family. It doesn't explain why, and the only explanation you're given, really, and it's not even an explanation, is the fact that this diary could be cursed. Well, how did it become cursed? And what happens when you read it? What is this curse? Because it keeps giving you the scary imagery in the film of faces distorted and scary images and seeing all these things and hearing all these things, but you just do not know what is the cause of all this. This film is so... some films can go way overboard with exposition and it ruins it. And this is the opposite way. It doesn't give you anything, any clues as to what's going on and why things are happening in this film at all, just that there's this cursed diary. And that is it, really. The other problem with this film is he's like a psychiatrist or psychologist, whatever you want to call him, who doesn't practice his trade. You don't see him with any patients. You don't know if he's got a good reputation, if he's a renowned psychiatrist, psychologist. He's just given this task to investigate, but it wouldn't necessarily be the job of a psychiatrist to investigate a past case, not necessarily. It just felt odd. If it was a journalist doing it or something, it would make more sense than a psychologist or a psychiatrist. If it was a journalist doing it, or a police officer, or a social worker, I think it would have made far more sense for them to investigate this, because he's a psychiatrist and he's not practicing his trade. There's nobody there for him to practice his trade on because she committed suicide. And the film just becomes really, really unfocused and messy about halfway through. Because, like I say, you don't know why these things are happening, and then there's scenes where you're not sure if he's dreaming or if he's awake, and it all kind of blends into one, and it just becomes really unfocused and messy. You start seeing ghosts, basically. So you have no idea what is going on at certain points in this film and what stage we're at, if he's awake, if he's asleep, has he lost his mind, is it this dead girl that's corrupting him, is it this diary that's cursed him? There's all these questions and you don't get any answers, and I think a lot of audience members are going to find that very frustrating. I know I did, for sure. There are some pretty effective imagery going on in this film. Like I say, there's some really distorted, scary images that you see now and then in the film that I think could have been utilised a bit better, because other than that, the film isn't particularly scary. And there's a couple of shocks here and there, and by that I mean the impact blows when people are getting killed in the film are actually quite wince-inducing and done quite effectively. And it really looks like, you know, these people are getting stabbed or whatever in the film, or beaten with hammers or this kind of stuff. So I take my hat off for that. Now, the thing is with this film, it's a very interesting idea. I just think the delivery of it and how they put it to screen didn't make sense. Like I say, I just thought it would have made more sense, like I say, if it was a police officer, journalist, social worker, somebody like that doing the investigating after the event, not a psychiatrist. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. There's a lot of problems here, but there's a decent idea at its core, and there's some decent imagery, and a couple of reasonable scares going on. So it's not the worst horror film I've seen, but there are an awful lot of issues with the film. So I hope you found this review useful. Thank you once again for watching, and of course I will see you next time for more reviews on Screen Stars.